everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Turnbuckle Time Machine here on the PFC Podcast Network, powered by Anchor.fm. I'm Jason Clouse. I appreciate you tuning in this week, and this is going to be another dual presentation recording session, both audio and video. I have a very esteemed and knowledgeable and, above all else, entertaining panel of co-hosts this week as we dive into not really a list of sorts, but it's going to be a personal reflections, personal influences on matches, the top 3 or 4 matches of the crown jewel of sports entertainment. Talking, of course, about WrestleMania. Joining me this week on this particular show is you've heard them all before if you've listened to this program for any length of time. All of them have very unique and different perspectives on the business, regardless of what topic we're talking about here. But first up, MWO Hall of Famer Tim Williams is with me. Hello, Tim.
Hello. It's good to be back.
It's good to see you, sir. It's been a minute.
Thank you. It has been a little bit.
Things okay in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, not too bad. Excited to talk a little wrestling. It's been a little while since I've had anybody to do that with. So, looking forward to it.
I am as well, sir. Also joining us, Ray Jackson. Hello, Ray.
How's it going, guys?
Good, man. How's things with you?
Pretty good. Except this diet I'm on right now, it's killing me. I had a little injury. I'm going to return to the ring 2 weeks from yesterday at the time of this recording, so pretty pumped.
Okay, how long had you been out for?
3 months. Concussion. It was a little accident in the ring.
Oh, it's not ballet, man.
Yeah, I was taking a spot with a neck breaker, like a jump breaker. My timing was a bit off, and I kind of stutter stepped, and when I bumped, a good friend of ours, Jeremiah J. Hughes, fell completely on my face. So that was fun.
No, that does not sound fun at all, actually. But
no.
I'm glad that things are improving, and certainly wish you the best of luck in your return to the ring here in a couple of weeks. So it'll be sooner than that before this show drops, after this show drops. But be that as it may. Rounding out our panel this week is Tim Sheridan. And Tim, great to see you, man. You and I had an opportunity before going live on the show here. We embarked on a very good conversation that I feel like is going to tie in with today's topic. Before we get to that, though, how are you, my friend?
I've been good. Life's good. Chiefs won the Super Bowl, so I'm excited. Weather's starting to turn, so I'm getting that itch to go golfing. So that's all I've been thinking about. So other than that, life's been good. Everything's been great.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I had a sense of the excitement in the Sheridan household over the Chiefs' victory at the Super Bowl. Your wife, Amy, on the Real podcast, spent a good portion of her airtime on the last episode. Yeah, she was all excited about it. So very cool. It's great to have you guys here this week. We are going to talk about our favorite matches from WrestleMania, because this is, of course, WrestleMania season. And if you are a wrestling fan, this really is the time of year most people look forward to. When I say most people, I would say, 9.5 out of 10, because everything gets amped up, gets amplified, all the bells and whistles, all the pomp and circumstance, like they really go into making WrestleMania feel larger than life, the biggest stage in the world, and it is. But as Sheridan and I were talking about before we came on the air, and something that I had reiterated last night during the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, I was actually over at Sean Krugel's house and watched it with him, and we were talking about, obviously what we were seeing on the screen, but how that relates to just the business now versus what it was. and it ties perfectly into what we're talking about here, because I'm sure we're going to have a variety of matches that we're going to talk about that resonate with you, but I may have thought was the drizzling shits. It's all about perspective. It's all about your individual wants and what you guys like. But I feel like, and this is where my conversation with Sheridan comes into play, is for the last few years, WrestleMania has not had that larger than life feel to it, at least for us, because there wasn't really anything, by and large, that people were wholeheartedly invested in, organically invested in, and we took that conversation from, the sights, the scenes, and the sounds of the main event of the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view last night with Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn, and just how that has erupted to what this is. Now, that's, an important part of a very well-told story, long-term. The best story they've done in a long time, in my opinion. So, Sheridan, expand for me, how important it is for fans to feel like they have something to be wholeheartedly invested in, and adds to the pomp and circumstance of the overall WrestleMania experience.
Well, it's that emotional connection. They haven't done that in a while. When you're building up to an event like that, you need some type of build up to have that emotional connection, and they have that right now. With the whole Sami Zayn storyline going on, and I haven't seen that since really the Daniel Bryan storyline. And without that, I think WrestleMania has really been lacking. There's nothing that makes me want to. I mean, of course, I'm going to watch it because I'm a fan, but there's nothing that makes me want to sit there and be glued to my TV while watching it, because I'm so emotionally connected to this match. The build up to it just hasn't been there. It's just been very generic. And I feel that again, it's going that way this year. I hope they do something to fix that.
For sure. And, like we had talked about, this groundswell for Sami Zayn, because of the, how well the Bloodline storyline has been executed up to this point. You had lightning in a bottle at that pay-per-view. It was in Montreal. It was in his hometown. If you were going to pull the trigger on him, that was the night to do it, right? So, now, what's cool about this panel here is that our fandoms have very different and distinct starting points. Tim Williams and I have been paying a lot, our fandom goes back a lot longer than Sheridan's and Ray's. So we're getting all kinds of different aspects to this. Tim Williams, when was the last time you were emotionally invested in a match or a storyline or something that took place at a WrestleMania?
Oh man, I don't even think I could tell you. I don't know. I mean, I went to, which WrestleMania was at Ford Field? Was that
23?
23. I mean,
Shawn
I was
Michaels
there live,
and John
but,
Cena.
right. But I wouldn't say I was really all that invested in any of those matches, to tell you the truth. That was Undertaker and Batista, right?
Yes, which should have been the main event, in my opinion, but be that as it may.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question. I mean,
were you invested? Were you invested in Hogan and Andre?
Oh, of course, I was there, and
Right.
and of course I was. Probably, well, the one that comes into my head right now, but I'm sure there had been something after it. But the one that pops into my head is Rock and Hogan. But I'm sure there was stuff after that. I mean, I was a big Christian fan. Did he ever? I don't know. Did he ever wrestle Orton at WrestleMania, or was that
No, those were at lesser
other
known
pay-per-views?
pay-per-view, like Night of Champions and things of
Okay.
that nature.
Okay. So I couldn't tell you. I would just have to say Rock and Hogan, I guess.
Which is a good one, because that, as I was thinking about it, last night and today preparing for the show, what was that last big match? What was the last WrestleMania that had that WrestleMania feel? And like Sean and I were talking about it last night, and a lot of what makes WrestleMania what it is the venue. These huge 60, 70, 80,000 seat stadiums, domes, and things of this nature. It's, a very larger than life presentation. Well, now you're doing Royal Rumbles at the Alamo Dome, and you're packing, 50,000 people in there. You're bringing SummerSlam to an 80,000 seat football stadium in Detroit, Michigan. You're doing Saudi Arabia shows that are bringing in 70,000 people. So none of them are, the more big stadium shows you do, it kind of takes that layer away from WrestleMania. And like, I just feel like if you're going to focus anything, it should be your Super Bowl event of the entire year. That's what, I don't give a shit who you are. If you get into this business as a worker, it is because in some way or another, you have a dream. You want to wrestle on WrestleMania. I don't care. That's what just about everybody's ultimate end game is, right? So, Ray, you are, you're the baby of the group here in a lot of aspects. Your fandom goes back to this point in time. So you may not, obviously you were not aware of the first several WrestleManias and the build up leading up to it and all of this stuff. When I say emotionally invested in a match, storyline, something along these lines for WrestleMania, what is the one that comes to your mind?
Like as of like recently,
Sure.
I think Daniel Bryan winning the title at WrestleMania 30 was like really big for me, though that was 8 years ago at this point, which is absolutely crazy to think about. That's actually what I credit to me getting into the business. I felt so much watching that. And then I think kind of the cliche answer would be like Kofi Mania was pretty amazing, seeing him and his kids celebrating together. Though it was kind of predictable he would win. But I think recently the best thing is Stone Cold returning against Kevin Owens. I watched that with the Mighty Bojack, and we were both damn near in tears, grown men, watching that match. And the fun part was you didn't even know that Stone Cold was going to wrestle. It was billed as an interview. Maybe they're going to fight. They're going to brawl. And next thing you know, they go 17 minutes, and Stone Cold's taking vertical suplexes on the concrete. So that's probably the one that really sticks out to me as in like recent.
That's a good one. And that's something that, that Tim Sheridan and I were, had touched on, especially the Daniel Bryan thing. We were talking about that visual of them being in the Superdome after he wins the title. Daniel Bryan, I'm talking about, and you've got all those people doing the yes thing, and it's quite the visual. One of those things that make WrestleMania what it is. And I can see where the pomp and the circumstance with WrestleMania 30 being like a milestone installment. But I'm going to tell you something, and I know I'm going to get shit for this. I didn't give a fuck about the Daniel Bryan movement, and the fact that main event was what it was, really between that and the Undertaker losing the streak, WrestleMania 30 is the complete shits for me.
You know what? We're even, because I thought I was banned from the show for saying I didn't think Paul Orndorff should have been the heavyweight champion. So we're even there.
Well,
Anyways.
I mean, you can't get mad at somebody's opinion, and it's because, and I'm realizing like our points of view are going to be different because our perspectives are different. We grew up in different eras of the business. When I think of a really larger than life WrestleMania feel, like one that I just could not wait for, was WrestleMania 17 in 2001 at the Astrodome in Houston. As soon as they went live in that dome and you saw how everything was laid out, my God in heaven, dude, like that was the last time I was like, damn, this is WrestleMania. And I felt like I was going to feel that way when they went to Tampa the year after the pandemic Mania in the empty performance center. Like I thought I was going to feel that way about that, and I didn't. And it fucking bugged me because it was like, you've got WrestleMania in front of a live ass crowd. You know, why does this not feel bigger? Tim Williams, for the benefit of younger fans, let's try to take a couple of minutes here and kind of lay the groundwork, and try to illustrate, even though it wouldn't be a WrestleMania 3 in the Silverdome is kind of its own chapter, but aside from that one, the importance of the buildup of the event, that even though it may have been held, and for the longest time was, in 20,000 seat arenas, Madison Square Garden, Staples Center, Philadelphia, Boston, I mean, all these major markets, but it still had that WrestleMania feel. How much of the buildup and the anticipation for the matches that they're putting on paper for these events makes the overall aura of what has made WrestleMania what it is?
I would say that's a huge part of it, because if you take, I mean, a lot of them, if you really look at, I mean, the build up for WrestleMania 1 obviously was huge. If you look at some of those matches, they're not fantastic. If you look at WrestleMania 2, the matches themselves, a lot of them are not fantastic. You know, even WrestleMania 3, a lot of the matches themselves are not fantastic, but the build up to all of those and beyond, but you know, those are the three originals that really stick out in my mind. I mean, plus the aspect of, I would say in the earlier days of it, not so much now, even though they do bring in the media, you know, from stars from other, you know, actors or whatever. But that part was huge, because it was just something that you weren't used to normally seeing. You know, they made a big deal out of it. It didn't even matter who it was. It was like, oh, okay, they're getting that guy. Like, it just had like that feel. Like even the Burger King commercial guy Herb, like at WrestleMania 2, it's just like, okay, whatever. But they made it seem like the way that they promoted it was like, oh, okay, that's a big deal. I mean, those commercials were big at the time, but yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of times the buildup is even bigger than what we get for a payoff. But I mean, they're masters of that. I mean, they're masters of the buildup at this point. WWF, WWE.
You make a good point in terms of part of the anticipation is the celebrity involvement and what their roles are. Now you take a guy like Pete Rose, who, you know, his appearances at WrestleMania have now become legendary to the point to where they put him in their Hall of Fame. You look back, I mean, from WrestleMania 1, you know, you've seen the highlight reels over and over and over again, who all was there: Muhammad Ali, Liberace, the Rockettes, Billy Martin. You go right on down the line. 2, because it was in 3 separate locations. Every location had its own batch of celebrities. 3, toned it down a little bit. I mean, Bob Uecker was there, Mary Hart was there, and Aretha Franklin. Great.
Alice Cooper,
yeah. I feel like Tim Sheridan, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like in terms of celebrity involvement, in terms of really getting the kind of reaction that you need with this kind of investment, was Mike Tyson at WrestleMania 14. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, that was perfect time for him coming in because he was still on top of the world at that point. So I think that was the last huge celebrity that really impacted a whole lot, you know. So I agree with that one 100%.
How much of the venue was a part of that field to how big Tyson's involvement is? Now, it was at the Fleet Center in Boston. Now, I wanted to compare that to just less than a handful of years before that, where they brought Lawrence Taylor in to wrestle Bam Bam Bigelow in what would be the closing match of WrestleMania 11. But like, not a lot of people pay attention to that or focus on it as much as they do Tyson's involvement. And Taylor was in an actual match. WrestleMania 11 really gets shoved under the rug for a lot of aspects because it was held at the Hartford Civic Center. Like if I hadn't said that, and I'm like, Ray, do you know where WrestleMania 11 was held? Would you have been able to tell me? Would you have guessed it right?
Not at all, but no. I knew 14 was in Boston, definitely.
Right. So the celebrity involvement, you know, and then you can look back. I think after Mike Tyson, probably the next big one that comes to mind in terms of outside eyeballs looking in and seeing what's happening. Actually, two of them. WrestleMania 23 with Donald Trump being involved in a hair versus hair match. And then 24 with a Big Show and Floyd Money Mayweather, boxer versus wrestler. How much of their involvement? Okay. Were they successful, in your opinion, in the roles that they were there for? And did it add to the pomp and circumstances of WrestleMania? Ray, we'll start with you.
I think so. Looking back on it, both of them performed pretty well. That Floyd Mayweather Big Show match still holds up to this day. I actually watched that not too long ago. It was a lot of fun.
Tim Williams?
Yes, definitely. And and I just want to say this too. Even last year is the one with Bad Bunny and the one night and Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah.
The other night.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
So I mean, it's a different thing too because their involvement, like you said, has gotten more and more. I don't even know what word I'm looking for, but their involvement is, I mean, they're actually having real matches, not like when Drew Carey was in the Royal Rumble or something like that.
More physically involved.
Physically, yeah, and they're doing a great job. I mean, to me, they're doing a great job at it too. So yeah, that aspect has evolved quite a bit over the years as well. But yeah, I think anytime, just about, I'm sure you can poke holes in some of the celebrities' involvements, but yeah, I mean, I think it just adds something to it.
Tim Sheridan, aside from Tyson and Mayweather, I guess Lawrence Taylor did to some degree. Has there been any other celebrities that have come in, performed at WrestleMania, and you're like, damn, that was a cool spot for them to do?
I mean, honestly, not. I mean, I know there's been a lot. There's people there every year. I mean, and you could go back and go, well, we can say Dwayne Johnson was a celebrity and he came in, but I don't really count that because he was The Rock before he became a celebrity. I think it all comes down to circumstance, really, and how they're impactful. And that's why I always go back to Tyson being impactful there, because it's not what he did, it's what he was a part of, you know. And you could say Big Show and Floyd Mayweather had a great, you know, what they did was good, but it still wasn't Tyson, you know, out there with Shawn and Austin at the peak of his rise.
Yeah.
The Donald Trump thing, I totally forgot about it. I mean, now that you say it, I remember it, so it's not that impactful. And other than that, I mean, every year you have celebrities, whether they come there and they perform, they sing, or other crazy little goofy spots, but I don't think they're as impactful as what they used to be back in the day.
Very good point of view, and I kind of agree with that. I mean, Bad Bunny, I know his involvement is something of a big deal to especially younger fans because they follow his music, and that's why the dude doesn't resonate with me because I don't know a fucking song that he does. And I mean, I've heard clips and whatever, but it's nothing that's going to make me go out and download his album or some shit like that. He just does. I just don't care about it. So I guess that's why it gets lost on me. Other people. What's that?
I was gonna say the only celebrity these days that I actually kind of get behind is actually, as stupid as it sounds, is Logan Paul, because you could tell the guy puts in the work. I mean, I haven't seen somebody come in like that and actually work a match the way that he works a match and gets over the way that he gets over. He puts in his time and he has a lot of respect for the business.
I think you and I were talking about it during the Royal Rumble, and he's a better worker than Mysterio is right now, Dominic Mysterio. Yeah, and it's like, what a slap in the face that is when you have a guy whose father is arguably the greatest luchador in the history of professional wrestling, and like he's struggling. You get a Logan Paul in here, and the difference is, and you nailed it. The dude's putting in the work, and it's showing. It's paying off. He had no shit in right having as good of a match with Roman Reigns as he did, but he did. And towards the end, it had me. I was invested in it, like on the edge of my seat. My God, are they going to put the title on this motherfucker?
It makes you a believer,
Right.
Like you can believe that you could see him in that position because he's that good,
Yeah. In the era of we're just waiting for the next big swerve to come, that would have been it. But
well, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Bad Bunny or Johnny Knoxville in a match is going to get me to buy a ticket or anything, but I'm just saying that they've come a long way from the celebrities' involvement from years ago.
No, I agree. That's on full display, and even with like Knoxville's involvement, it was what it was. It was a comedy match, and God bless Sami Zayn for doing everything that he could to make that work and not look like shit. Like his professionalism, his investment, his involvement, his understanding of the stage that he was on, made that match what it was. I compare that and contrast it to the bullshit that went on at WrestleMania 20 with Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. The unprofessionalism that was on full display in that match. So there's your comparison and contrast to and from. So here's what we're going to do. Let's make the transition into what we're really here. I mean, we've spent a half an hour, so kind of laying out the groundwork of what is WrestleMania, what makes it the granddaddy of them all, as they say, the crown jewel of sports entertainment, the show of shows. We're going to go around and we're going to talk about our top 3, maybe 4 matches from WrestleManias. And I'm very curious from everybody's point of view here, because your fandom is in different eras. Like your peak fandom is in different eras. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes. And, we'll go around the horn 3 times. And Ray, we'll go ahead and start with you, man. When I say your favorite WrestleMania matches, what's the first one that comes up?
Well, I don't want to give my list in any particular order or anything, but I'll just throw one out there. I would have to say Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, WrestleMania 10 to open the show. That one, I think, because I was born in 1988, so I was about 5 when that happened, but I grew up kind of in the video store days, so I wore that VHS out when I rented that, and I just rewatched that as we were starting this chat. It was in the background, and just like, if you want like, a technical match, that's the one to go to. Let alone the build all the way from Survivor Series to Rumble. It's classic. And when you watch that match, it ages so well. Like I said, I was just watching it, and it's like that's the way I wish I could wrestle. It's just perfect. It's so good.
I would say that Brett versus Owen is the greatest opening match in WrestleMania history to this day. And you're absolutely right. It stands out. It holds water to this day. Great match. Fundamentals are on full display because that match proved you didn't need a whole lot of additional bullshit to get your work over, and that is what it is. Now, Ranker.com, we looked this up last night. Either Ranker or Bleacher Report, we were looking up what they thought was the best WrestleMania matches of all time, and on their list, it was Brett versus Owen, which I vehemently will not agree with. Good match, yes. Greatest match in WrestleMania history, absolutely not. Tim Sheridan, what's one on your list, pal?
One on my list is, and I go always back to emotional connections or connections that I have. And I remember being a kid one Christmas, I had gotten this Best of WrestleMania VHS tape. And I mean, I wore that thing out. But the match that I watched on there 100 damn times was Shawn versus Razor at WrestleMania 10. Like, I watched that match so many times. That ladder match was epic to me, and still probably one of my favorites today.
I mean, was it the backstory of that's what brought your emotional attachment to the match? Were you a Razor fan? Were you a Shawn fan?
I mean, I've always been a Shawn fan, and as we go down this list, you'll realize it. But it was having that. I didn't have anything else. So it was like I could just watch that over and over again. It's just that match just stuck with me, and I just watched it. And I know I brought that match up in previous episodes that we've talked about. But yeah, that's always been one of my favorite matches at WrestleMania ever. I think it was the aspect of the ladder match. They were realistically the first ones that I thought really did it right, and got it over.
And it really set the bar in terms of what the ladder match was supposed to be. I mean, despite the fact that they were toying around with this concept on house shows and things of this nature, I feel like I had heard it was actually Bret the Hitman Hart that had introduced the idea of bringing the ladder matches to WWE. But Shawn and Razor, as at WrestleMania, your first big high-profile marquee ladder match, and you couldn't have asked for two better guys to execute that. Ray, I feel like the ladder match resonated with you at WrestleMania 10. Would that be fair to say?
One of my favorites of all time.
Yeah, I figured it would. Tim Williams, what's on your list, pal?
I have a feeling you're not going to be surprised by this one, but it is the Intercontinental match. Randy Savage is the Dragon Steamboat from Mania 3. I was there live, albeit way in the back, but yeah, that match just stole the show for me and a lot of other people, obviously. I know a lot of people kind of poo-poo it now because they say that Randy Savage had planned that match out once or whatever, but who cares? It's just, I know it's up there on a lot of people's lists, but to me, that match is still up there. Is still my number one.
To this day, Savage and Steamboat at WrestleMania 3 is my all-time favorite professional wrestling match. To this day. I look, how many thousands of matches have I watched in my lifetime? Okay. after WrestleMania 3. That's, Matt, in my opinion, you will not find a more perfect professional wrestling match on all accounts than Ricky the Dragon Steamboat winning the Intercontinental title from the Macho Man Randy Savage in Pontiac, Michigan in 1987. The setting, the build, everything.
How underrated is that finish, too, with the roll-up? Like, so simple, but it's not done in the way that they do it now. You know what I mean? You don't really see it finish like that anymore.
It was the kind of finish that took the crowd a second to realize what the fuck just happened.
Yeah,
and
that's a good
you can hear that on video, and I realize a lot of that reaction is because of the noise going up to the dome and then coming back down. But if you watch other matches before that match happens, like the noise is still very much in camera view, in speaker view, and it's a delayed reaction. Like the ones on the floor saw what happened, and then once they realized it, then you got the big roar. Tim, when I know we kind of touched on this in previous episodes, but based on where you were sitting in the Silverdome that night, how long did it take for you to register what you just saw and that Steamboat had indeed rolled up the Macho Man for the win?
So I want to say at that point of the night, you were starting to be able to see the screens hanging off the ceiling. So I probably watched it more on the screen. So I think I realized it immediately myself. But yeah, I mean, do you guys think the only question I have is, do you guys think that George the Animal Steel's involvement in it just took a little bit away from it? I mean, I know that he was involved in the feud with Savage and the whole thing with Miss Elizabeth, but you know, they wanted him to have his moment, I think, there in Michigan too. But do you feel that just it takes away just a little bit of it?
That would be the one thing that I would not have. I don't care if he was standing out at ringside. Like I got that part, but for him to jump up on the apron, push Savage off the top rope, I didn't really feel like was needed. And you're right. If there was one flaw in that match, that was it. They didn't need that spot.
It's kind of a heel move too, you know.
Back then, Ray, it wasn't like that. You know, it was the way shit was presented back then was so different than what it is, because, you know, and I'm not trying to be disparaging, and I know I'm going to go on a goddamn rant right now, but like wrestling fans nowadays have zero patience. Wrestling fans nowadays, the younger demographic, they don't appreciate the fundamentals of what makes professional wrestling so fucking great. It's matches like Savage and Steamboat that is on documentation, on video, record of how great wrestling was. And you see glimpses of it nowadays, but they're few and far between. Mm-hmm. It's that lack of emotional connection that Sheridan was referring to, because everything has to happen now, or else younger fans get bored with the storyline, with the exception being the bloodline, because that is so well done at this point. That's the best story in professional wrestling right now. I don't give a fuck under what banner, what company. I don't care. It is that is wrestling when wrestling is good. Okay. But you have matches like Savage and Steamboat. You have matches, even, you know, Razor and Shawn Michaels. You know, you can even utilize other matches that don't get all kinds of attention for one reason or the other. Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit at WrestleMania 17 is a mat classic, but people don't really focus on that anymore because of Chris Benoit's involvement in it, and I understand. But you can't take away what happened on that particular night. That was excellence of execution. Okay. So I'm done with my rant.
Good rant.
All right. Ray, what's another match on your radar, man?
Well, hold on, Jason. You're not going to give us yours?
I am.
Okay.
but
Okay.
I don't want to repeat the same one. So I'm writing, like, I have my list,
Okay.
but if we've already talked about it, I'm going to spotlight other matches that resonated with me.
Fair enough.
All right, well, I kind of like debated on this because I didn't want to have like one of my favorite matches from like the same. I kind of wanted to spread it out, and then I had to like ask myself, like, why lie to myself? Like, just say what I like. So this is another one from WrestleMania 10.
Okay.
Yokozuna versus Lex Luger. I'm just kidding. That's for Eric Cherry.
I was going to say, dude, I was just going to cut your feed right the fuck off. We are done here, Ray. You are missing the point.
Background. It's on in the background right now, and I've been kind of watching it. This match sucks. When Yoko's works you, like, this is the best part's Jim Cornette taking that bump inside the ring. But anyways, it is from WrestleMania 10, though, in all realness, seriousness, the ladder match, Razor for Shawn Michaels. Just, though Shawn Michaels isn't, I wouldn't even put him in my top 5. It's just me, but at the same time, I love so much of his work. Like, his selling in this match alone. And Razor Ramon's one of my favorites of all time. Scott Hall, just how cool he is. Like, going under the ladder and the entrance. And I love that entranceway in Madison Square Garden in WrestleMania 10. I love how they did it. WrestleMania 1, 10, 20. I wish they would have done that every decade. Would have been kind of cool. But I digress. It's just how innovative it was at the time. I never seen anything like it. The urgency to try to get the 2 titles with the story behind it was a lot of fun. And just how Shawn Michaels could beat down the bigger man by using the ladder. They actually use the ladder better than people do nowadays. It's so common. It's just close to perfect in my opinion. I watched it so many times. Same with Tim. Like I said, I rented that tape over and over again.
All right. Obviously a big influence. I didn't realize, I get it though. I get it. Tim Sheridan, what's another one on your list?
All right, so another one on mine, and I have to agree with Ray when he said that Shawn wouldn't even make his top 5, because in the overall aspect of the business, I don't think Shawn Michaels would make my top 5, but when it comes to a WrestleMania list, there is a reason why they call him Mr. WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. My next one is another emotional connection, and it's from probably 2 of the best to ever lace up their boots. It was Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair, WrestleMania 24. Oh, the emotion in that match, the build up to that match, just the way the match ended with Flair getting up off his knees and Michaels just mouthing "I love you" and then putting him down. I mean, that was just, you can't have a better emotional connection than that in a match. Like, I still go back and watch that match, and it still goes. I mean, I wish Rick would have ended his career right there.
Yes.
That was the most beautiful send-off you could ever have in this business. And that would probably be one of my tops, but I'm just trying to keep them in order. But that was the last time that, not the last time that I got fully emotionally connected to a match, but one of my favorites. That build-up is just, it was insane.
It was organic. It wasn't overly complicated. The story itself, the stipulations itself was very clearly laid out. It was the participation of the key parties in this that made it what it was. Mm-hmm. You would not have had that moment if it wasn't Shawn Michaels. And I'm with you guys. Like, Shawn Michaels, in my opinion, this is going to, Eric Cherry is going to stop listening to the show because he's going to feel like we're shitting on him. But like, Shawn Michaels, to me, I know this is going to ruffle feathers, is probably, he's had great matches. Make no mistake about it. But he is not in my top 10 in terms of my favorite wrestlers,
But overall, can you say that? But when it comes to WrestleMania, he was always a different person.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Flair Michaels at WrestleMania 24, and I am so on board with the philosophy of that should have been it for Flair. He should have never I don't care if you want to go work for TNA and all this shit, you know, in a managerial role or some sort of authority figure. Like, I get that. You're Ric Flair. You have to be involved in the business. But my God, like everything just went downhill right after that. Because, and for me personally, I feel like at this point, every time he opens his fucking mouth in public, he is doing something to tarnish his legacy. Like, the man is fucking losing it.
Yeah,
But on that night, at the age that he was, at the stage of his career that he was, he felt like Ric Flair. And I hadn't felt like that, you know, during the tag title run and, you know, that he had with, you know, Piper and his involvement with Evolution and all this shit. Like, I just didn't feel like Ric Flair. That night at WrestleMania 24 felt like Ric Flair. Tim, you've been watching Ric Flair a long time. Tim Williams. What's as a sidebar here, what is your opinion of the Flair Michaels match at 24? Tim Sheridan brings up a great match, and it spawns really its own topic.
So that didn't come into my head when you asked me the original question about the last time I was emotionally invested in a movie or in a match, and that could possibly be it. I think about that. But I totally agree with you. And he just, again, Ric Flair would probably be in my top 10, maybe, but he was just never one of my top favorites. He just wasn't. You know, maybe it's because I kind of rooted for the underdog at times more so than anything, but yeah, totally. That should have been it. That should have been it for him. I mean, okay, maybe bring him back and have a special match or something every now and then. Go him out of retirement or something like that. But no, you have all the stuff in TNA, and then a couple years ago, whatever that was when he had that last match. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I just think every time he's out there, it's just it's just like he's tarnishing his legacy, like you said.
Ray, I feel like you take exception here.
I mean, it's all opinions. I'm just shocked. It's like a stake through the heart. Not Ric Flair, not in your top 10. Oh my God.
I mean, I would have to.
Man.
I mean, I would have to think about it, but I don't think so. I got some.
I don't have to think about
in there
it
anyway.
He's not in your top 10 either?
No.
What?
No.
What about you, Tim? Is he in your top 10?
Oh, he'd be in my top 10.
Oh, I almost shut the computer off. That's fine.
He's probably number 11. And I'm not taking anything away from what the man's done in the business. I'm not. I recognize what Ric Flair's done. But
it caught me off guard more than anything. I said, what? Holy
what's
crap.
that?
I said, it just caught me off guard more than anything. I said, holy smoke.
Well, I'm glad you're sitting down. Everything will be fine, Ray.
Yeah,
we're just having a conversation. Just having a talk.
Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels would be tied for my number 11. Just kidding.
Oh, good one. Good. Oh, Tim Williams, what's another match for you?
Okay, so this one is less about the match itself and more about my emotional investment in both of these guys. And it's probably not that most people would have on their list, but it is the intercontinental match between Bret Hart and Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 7. The reason that, I mean, I know I've talked about this before. One of the reasons that I wrestling fan in the beginning was because of Roddy Piper. One of the reasons I became a wrestling fan was because of Roddy Piper. I wasn't such a huge fan of him after he turned babyface and came back. But I mean, I was still a fan. But Bret Hart, I was pretty much a fan of his the first time I had seen him in the Hart Foundation. And watching his rise I don't think a lot of people give this match credit because I think this was like a huge torch being passed from kind of like the original, the original WWF boom to what would come later. You also had blood in the match that you hadn't seen for a while. So I mean, I remember watching that. I popped for that. Just the whole psychology of it, because you don't know if Piper's going to turn against Hart. I mean, they had kind of teased it in the interviews leading up to it. So yeah, I thought about it a little bit, but that would be my number 2.
That is a good one, and it's one that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. And I, as I think about this, I feel like it's very much an era thing too, because when WrestleMania 8 happens at the Hoosier Dome, the company is kind of starting a transitional period. Like they're starting to figure shit out without Hulk Hogan in the immediate big picture plans here, and they're starting to build around newer talent. Bret Hart was the right guy in the right place, right time, the right guy. And you're right, the psychology part of that match, it was on full display, and it was a lot of because of Roddy Piper, and that speaks so many volumes as to what his contributions to the business are. That's often overshadowed when you just talk about him. Anybody who talks about Piper, you're like, oh my God, he's loudmouth, he's this, he's that, he wears the skirt, blah, blah, blah. No, you're missing the fucking point. You're missing what makes him so great. And you just put that out there. So great match, great pick. What is it about the Intercontinental? I mean, I already know I know the answer to this already, but just for the sake for our listeners, what is it about the Intercontinental Championship matches that resonate with you so much?
Well, and maybe it's still this way to this day. I don't really know, but back in that era, definitely that was the workhorse belt. It was viewed as more of the workhorse belt, and that's it was pretty quick on in my fandom that I realized that those matches were a lot of times stealing the show from the main event matches as far as the in-ring work went. So I think that's why it was also viewed as a stepping stone to who was possibly going to rise to the world title after that. So that's probably why.
I knew that was going to be your answer. I just wanted you to put that out there for people to hear. And you're right. You look back on the lineage, especially the earlier lineage, because I mean, there for a while they were treating that title like it was hot potato, man. Like there was no stability to it, and it had lost a lot of, in my opinion, like the prestige of the title. It wouldn't probably be until Cody Rhodes got a hold of it and reintroduced the classic championship belt on the white strap that I'm like, okay, they're trying to make this important again. We don't really spend a tremendous amount of time talking about current product, but Gunther and what he's done with the Intercontinental title, like this dude is a legitimate badass, and he has really restored credibility to the Intercontinental Championship, in my opinion.
For sure.
Ray, what's another one here, man?
I want to say about the Intercontinental title, I agree with you guys. I want to show Tim this. I got the Razor signature. I see literally right next to me, so I agree. So
I saw the unveiling of that.
Kid on Christmas, man. But anyways, my number 1 is my absolute favorite wrestling match of all time. It's my very favorite ever. Nothing stands up to this. It is Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin submission match, WrestleMania 13. My all-time favorite. just the story they had going into it. And I was a kid at the time, huge Bret Hart fan. I didn't understand him kind of turning heel, and I didn't want to like Stone Cold because, you know, when you're that young, it's like he's bad, he's good, that's how it is. And the way it kind of intertwined towards the end with that double turn, in that sequence, you could take a photograph of it, a video of it, of Stone Cold fighting through the pain of the sharpshooter. He actually breaks the sharpshooter at one point, and Bret Hart pulls it back on. I could literally shed a tear as a grown man watching that sequence of the match. The amount of feeling and emotion I get at that moment in time, in JR's call at the end, Stone Cold never gave up. He passed out from the pain. And just that really resonated with me as a kid, too. And that's where it started, you know, and that was where Stone Cold's start to his rise kind of around that time was starting. I couldn't deny it then. And to this day, it's my favorite of all time.
It's a good one. The psychology is off the charts in that match. If you want to look at from a psychological advantage, that probably is the one you got to put in. Bret Hart, Steve Austin, the double turn. You know, you want to talk about blood. Tim Williams mentioned it earlier with Bret and Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 8. It seems like Bret, you know, when the time was right, he would incorporate that in some way or another. That in this particular aspect, it was Austin that was bleeding, and man, was he ever. Blood like a stuck pig, man. And but it provided that visual for what the Attitude Era was fixing to be all about. And man, it was done so perfectly and so well. And I can totally understand, you know, why that is on your list there, because you know, it's on my top three. You know, I have my top three. This is one of them. So yeah, good choice there. Tim Sheridan, what rounds out your top three, pal?
All right, so another one. I'm gonna sound like a damn broken record here. And this one was kind of hard for me to choose because there's so many matches from this particular era that I could have gone with. But this one, once again, emotional connection. Another coming to the end of an era match would have to be WrestleMania 26, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. Absolute clinic of a match. You know, all the false finishes in that match. You don't know which way it's going to go. You know, Shawn loses, career over, the embrace at the end, just the show of respect at the end of it. It was, once again, just complete emotional connection to a match. And I could have went with, I mean, Undertaker in that era, whether it was Shawn Michaels or Triple H, the matches that they all had in that timeline were all amazing, but that had to be one of my favorites. And it was the end of an era. It was the end of Shawn Michaels. You know, it was his last match, and still absolutely one of my favorite WrestleMania matches ever.
So having said that, how pissed were you, if you were at all, when they...
I ignore it. I already know where you're going. I ignore it. It never happened. Never watched it.
Fair enough.
Can't believe he did it because he stayed away for so long.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
And my follow-up question to that was going to be, obviously, I felt like Shawn Michaels took exception to the fact that Flair went and did shit elsewhere after what was supposed to be the retirement match, and that's why he stuck to his guns to stay retired with his loss to The Undertaker. But it's my understanding, and I could be wrong on this, all depending on the different articles that I had read, but it was actually The Undertaker's blessing and okay that allowed for that not to be mentioned tag match to take place years and years down the road, because I'm very much with you, Tim. He should have left it alone at WrestleMania 26. Now, generally speaking, fans will actually look to their match the year prior at 25 as their better of the two. Do you know, is it an in-ring thing, or is it more of that emotional attachment?
It's the story.
Yeah.
You know, their match the year before was amazing too. Probably better than that match, but it didn't have the story to go along with it. You know, it was the end of an era there. I mean, it's all that emotional connection to a match, like I've said a million times, but you felt more emotionally connected to that match because you knew that there was a possibility of that career ending there or the streak ending, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I could go any way in that era of, you know, Undertaker WrestleMania matches, and between those two with Shawn, or I think two with Hunter right after that, right?
Yeah.
All those matches were insane. Just absolute clinics. I mean, the stories that they put on were absolutely amazing. But that one still sticks out because that was supposed to be Shawn's last match. You know, and it was just, and I think it was just the same way that they did in that match with the embrace at the end of it, the sign of respect. And then the last one with Triple H, you know, I think that was the one with Shawn as the special guest referee, how they all stood up at the top of the stage and all were embracing and holding each other up. You know, it was just, it's that sign of respect, you know, that gets me. You know, it's, I don't know, that's where me as a fan becomes emotionally connected and just always brings back those memories. You know, I can't even tell you what happened in last year's WrestleMania, but I can still remember all those WrestleManias, watching them over and over again and being excited to watch those WrestleManias, you know. And we just don't get that anymore.
No, we certainly don't. Because you just nailed it right there. You don't remember what happened last year, you know, 11 months ago, and we're fixing to do 39 here. And
I can't say that I don't remember everything, because I do remember the Austin versus Kevin Owens, but other than that, I don't remember anything, you know.
But that wasn't the technical build main event. It was Roman and Brock for you know, winner take all, and the fact that, you know, it's Steve Austin's quote unquote match with Kevin Owens is what people remember, and justifiably so, because it was an overall way better experience to watch as a fan. Like, those people were so invested in that, and that probably should have closed out night 2 instead of night 1. And
I didn't even watch night 2.
Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't watch it. That was all I wanted to see, was that match. That was all I was invested in.
That's incredible to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get it. But it also speaks volumes on what the disconnect is for our demo, you know? Like, shit. You want to keep as many eyeballs on this thing as you possibly can. You gotta appeal to everybody. You know, that's what makes wrestling great. There's something for everybody. It's not just one specific thing, one-dimensional thing that we're just all supposed to like, you know. That's part of what makes it so great. Now, before I go into my my spotlight matches, I'll call them, is there any other matches that really, really resonated? You really had a hard time trying to put them on a short list, but there's something that really, really stands out about them. Ray, for you?
I was going to say, Tim, you get your number 1 in?
Oh, Tim.
I was going in a reverse order than you, Ray. My number 1 was Savage and Steve.
Yeah.
I didn't get my number 3 in, but
go ahead with your number 3, because I go on a goddamn rant and I forget where I'm at.
No, it doesn't matter. This is a tough one for me. A lot of the ones that you guys named already could be up there, but it would be there for me. But honestly, if I think about matches that I would go back and rewatch more than any other, it's kind of weird. The British Bulldogs versus the Dream Team from WrestleMania 2. Why? I don't know. It's just I love the British Bulldogs. I love the Hart Foundation at the same time. But there's just something about that match, going back and watching. That I did when I originally watched it, but I still, what's that? But I still into
We're
that
having
match
a
for
little
some
bit
reason.
of audio issues with you, Tim. You're cutting in and out a little bit. I did hear
what
enough
about
to
now?
know. Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Did you hear what match I said?
The Bulldogs and the Dream Team at WrestleMania 2, correct?
And mainly because the fit when I watched that, I can still level that it was when I originally watched, but there's something about that I could still get into for some reason, even though I know the outcome and I've seen it plenty of times, but there's just something about it.
I agree, and it's actually on my honorable mentions list. You know, that was I was with you, man. I was a big Bulldogs fan. I thought they were great, and you know they brought Ozzy Osbourne in to be in their corner, and they were already managed by Captain Lou, and the Dream Team were just such pricks. You know, Greg Valentine,
Exactly.
Brutus Beefcake, and for them to win the titles, and again, it was one of those finishes nobody saw coming. It wasn't a big high spot. It wasn't a big finishing move spot. It was one being whipped in the corner, slams into Dynamite's head. He goes flying into the third row, and then Davey Boy Smith goes in for the pin. It's over. That fast.
That's definitely another one where I don't think the crowd understood what had just happened. It took them a minute to realize it just happened there.
Yep, for sure. And again, you can hear that that delayed reaction, even though the bell was sounding and they knew that the match was over. It's like, whoa, shit! They just won the titles because I don't think anybody really expected them to for whatever reason.
Right.
But they finally got to the top of that mountain, and it was on a worldwide stage, so it was very cool. Good pick, real good pick. I want to focus on, because I mean, some of my matches, you guys, you know, I've already talked about. Like I said, Savage, Steamboat, Undertaker, and Shawn Michaels from 25. I would put up there, even though I was very invested in the high stakes that went into 26, the streak versus the career. Just that emotion, like I felt exhausted after watching WrestleMania 25 because of that match, because I had more worry that Shawn was going to end the streak at 25 than I did at 26, even though I know his career was on the line a year later. For me, man, I mean, it's on the list. It's Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, because that, to me, is the first match that comes to mind when I think of what made WrestleMania what it is here and now. And that could be the launching point for me in terms of great, big, huge presentation in terms of one particular match, one main event. The popular 3-year running world heavyweight champion, the undefeated evil turncoat giant, you know, something's got to give. Hogan, Andre, and even though like the matches had between those two had happened years prior, it was ignored, like it never fucking happened. So as a 9 and 10-year-old kid, or a 10, 11-year-old kid, I'm going into this build for WrestleMania 3, and okay, yeah, there's another layer of anticipation because it's happening in the Pontiac Silverdome. And I've made no bones about the fact my fascination for that stadium. But it's that, I mean, you can't watch a WrestleMania recap video package and there's not something mentioned of Hogan and Andre. It's in the goddamn signature when they go on the air for any show, Raw, SmackDown, or NXT, pay-per-views, whatever. That's the first thing you see is that giant slam. So Hogan and Andre is on there. I mentioned earlier that the last time I really had that big anticipation feel for WrestleMania was in 2001 at 17 in Houston. And it was because of The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, Ray, to your credit, Austin and Bret Hart would be on my top three. Okay, so let me just put that out there. But Rock Austin 2 at WrestleMania 17 to me was that last big main event, big fight feel. Like I was so wholeheartedly invested in this match. And even with all the fuckery with Vince McMahon and they tried to do the heel turn at the end, I didn't give a shit. The fact could, because it goes back to what Tim Sheridan was talking about. I was emotionally invested. I wanted Steve Austin to come back from this neck injury that took him out for a year and to prove that he was still the top guy in the business, and he did. And I think that's why that match resonates with me so much. Plus, I mean, the atmosphere, the backdrop. Like, I'm a huge sucker for domes, man, and like it gets no more old school than the Astrodome, and that added to it. The lighting and all of it, loved it.
Didn't that have that really good hype package too, like to Limp Bizkit My Way?
Yes.
Rock and Cold 2. That's like known as like the Baver. I agree. That's a good pick.
Yeah, we mentioned this last night watching the Elimination Chamber. Nobody does hype videos, video packages. I don't care what the fuck we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's football. I don't care if it's baseball. I don't care if it's the Oscars. I don't give a shit about any of it. Nobody does a better job than WWE. Hands fucking down. And I'll argue with anybody about it. You know. Rounding out my list, and this was what I was like, man, I want to dig into the archives here with one, just because you talk about WrestleMania, you always talk about Shawn Michaels, Hulk Hogan, all these big main event caliber stars that have helped form an identity of what WrestleMania is. All depending on what era that we're talking about here. Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 21. In terms of a more modern era in WWE, in professional wrestling in general, Kurt Angle is one of those guys that he gets credit. Make no mistake about it. I just don't think he gets enough of it because he's often not discussed among the all-time greats for whatever reason. But that match that he had with Shawn Michaels could have closed out WrestleMania 21 because it was certainly a better match than what did close it out, and that was Triple H and Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship. I will point to Angle and Michaels all the time as one of those matches to go back and watch it when it's done right by two in-ring professionals on the highest level. So those would be my three.
It's a good list. Everybody has a really good list.
At least I don't feel left out having Shawn Michaels on my list every time. That sounds like he made quite a few people's lists there.
Well, like you said, Tim, he didn't earn the moniker Mr. WrestleMania for no reason. Yeah. I don't have to be a fan of his to recognize the greatness that he is, and he has provided some very memorable moments. You can go down, and he has a losing record at WrestleMania, and that's something else that doesn't get talked about a whole hell of a lot. He's regarded as one of the greatest performers in WrestleMania history, probably second, second under, and I guess it all depends on perspective, but second to the Undertaker, just because of the streak. But he's still Mr. WrestleMania for a reason. His match with Jericho, his match, he's even with John Cena. Like, he closed WrestleMania 23 in Detroit with John Cena, and I was pissed that was the match for the WWE title in Detroit. Why? But I watched it, I mean, I was in the stadium, but like,
Yeah.
he put on display why he was in that spot, and it was really
Well, I'll give him credit too. Easily could have been my number 3 is the Iron Man match with Brett at WrestleMania 12.
Yes.
Yep.
Also, and the ladder match with Razor too. That could have been my 3 too. I just thought about it, and the reason that I picked the Bulldogs match was because it is one that I would actually go back and rewatch from time to time. And by all accounts, Hogan and Andre probably should be in my top 3 because it was there. But
right.
It's the 5-minute bear hug kind of takes it out for me a little bit, drops it down a few notches for me. But
no, I get it. I totally understand that. Yeah. Listen, great topic this week. Great conversation. Great points of view. Ray, you didn't piss me off this week, so that's a good sign.
Me either.
I kid, Ray.
Oh, I know.
Great topic though, and for those who haven't been aware of what's going on with our schedule here with the shows, allow me a couple of moments to explain what we're doing here. Generally, Turnbuckle Time Machine had a Monday at midnight time slot that we would drop, and it became increasingly difficult for me on my end, 100% my end, to get all the ducks in a row in a consistent manner to follow suit with that. So what we're doing with this show is we are alternating this show with the real podcast for Saturday at midnight drops. So every other week you will hear the Turnbuckle Time Machine. In the opposite weeks is when you will hear the real podcast with Amy Sheridan, Tim's wife. Both very good shows. If you haven't checked out the real podcast, I don't know why you haven't. You are missing out on entertainment gold, as well as the other shows that we offer here on the PFC Podcast Network. Of course, the flagship show, the Clouse to the Heart podcast, drops on Tuesdays, and on Wednesdays you can find new episodes of Power Tripping through the 80s. And we will be back here in 2 weeks with a new episode of the Turnbuckle Time Machine. It will be something of a WrestleMania theme. We're going to kind of roll that out. Probably do a preview episode of sorts based on what is presented in terms of the card going up to this big 2-night extravaganza. Of course, it's happening in Los Angeles. It goes Hollywood again this year. Anybody see the first trailer that they pulled out last night in terms of promotions with Seth Rollins redoing the Joaquin Phoenix portrayal of Joker? Anybody see that last night during the Elimination Chamber? Go on YouTube and check it out. It's really worth a watch. This is what I was hoping they were going to do, is redo movie trailers like they did in 21, the last time they were in Los Angeles. And like they came out with guns a-blazing, man. Seth Rollins fucking nails it and had me rolling. And it was very well done. So for Ray Jackson, for the Tim Towers, Tim Sheridan, Tim Williams, I'm Jason Clouse. We appreciate you tuning in this week. Go out, be awesome to yourselves and to each other. And we'll see you in 2 weeks with a brand new episode of the Turnbuckle Time Machine here on the PFC Podcast Network, powered by Anchor.fm. The 1980s. It was such a great time to be alive. In order to find our favorite songs, we had to go through cassette tapes, and nights out may consist of going to the roller rink or getting together with some friends to hit the arcade. But on Friday, March the 24th, we are going to hop into the time machine and go back and revisit that time. We are heading to the Backroads Bar and Grill in Holly, Michigan. for an event that's going to be a lot of fun. It's the Power Trippin' Through the 80s Karaoke and Costume Party with DJ Cassandra Ray. So think about what songs you may want to sing and gather some friends. Step out on stage and be the star that you've always wanted to be. And if you have a costume, go ahead and break that out. You will also see, for the first time ever, a live podcast recording of Power Trippin' Through the 80s. So join us for the Power Trippin' Through the 80s Karaoke and Costume Party on Friday, March the 24th, between 8 p.m. and midnight at the Backroads Bar and Grill in Holly, Michigan.